while. We're like, la 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 la.
I know, no, it's always that's why I was like, let's get on a little bit early so we have any technical difficulties or just opportunities to catch up. But so yeah, so it's like pushing to
And we're
YouTube
like,
and I know, no, it's always that's why I was like, let's get okay, we are live on YouTube. Wonderful. So welcome everybody if you are tuning in to our latest expert series. Traditionally with these, obviously, when we go live, it's an opportunity for people to kind of pay attention in real time. There is a chat function. So if you are watching and you have questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Otherwise, this video will live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/restartcbd, and you can check out all the rest of our content and videos from our expert series. But today's expert series features Leaf411, and I am so excited to have Catherine from their team, the founder, the CEO of Leaf411, joining us today. And really just truly, Leaf411 to me, when I first found out about it, was really like transcendent to me. Like this idea that there were medical professionals who wanted to openly talk about cannabis to consumers in a very consultative, guided way was just like it blew my mind. And so basically ever since I came across Leaf 411, which now would have been 3 years ago, I feel like we've been a member with you guys and a partner with your program. But it's a service essentially that allows our customers to access your network of nurses to talk about cannabis. But obviously, I would love to hear from you. What is Leaf 411 and kind of how did you start it and why did you start it and share
sure.
with us kind of a little bit of the journey.
Yeah, well, thank you. God, I'm so excited to be here. Like before everyone saw us, you and I are talking, 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 because it's so great to talk to, even though you're a business supporter, you believe in our mission, there's that camaraderie of like, gosh, we've been in this, been in this space for a while and, and it's grown so much and it's exciting to see where it's, what's happening and where we've been. So, since the beginning in 2019 is where Leaf 411 first launched. My co-founder and I actually worked on it a year prior. So it took us an entire year to make sure that when we launched it, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be shut down because, at that time the regulators were like, no, you can't have a pamphlet in a dispensary. So it took us a year to get kind of the blessing of our what they call the marijuana enforcement division here in Colorado to say, yeah, sure, you guys go for it. So so we started the first cannabis nurse hotline, and now we call it a guidance center because we offer not only a free hotline that'll always be there for your quick questions like how do I get a medical card, how do I find a legal dispensary? We get those questions, and where should I buy something, to more complex questions where we ask you to schedule a guidance call. When we launched that, we just, gosh, we wanted to meet people where they were at, where they could be in their home, they have pad and pencil, they could write down information. 30-minute calls. So we asked for a $25 donation for that, but because of the support from businesses like Restart, you can give that free to your customers, which is amazing. And you talk about your mind blown back then, seeing that there's actually licensed medical professionals in this space. People to this day still are amazed to find out that there are expertly trained, licensed RNs, nurse practitioners, MDs, DOs, that are expertly trained on cannabis therapeutics so they can guide you from beginning all the way through your journey. And people are still amazed by that. So, having this platform, I think, has been very key because we focus on healthcare equity. That was that's my passion. That's who I am, is to ensure that everyone has that nurse in their pocket and they can grab that pocket nurse at any time, whether it's by phone, scheduled appointment, regardless of their income. Because as you and I have dealt with for over the years, it becomes expensive because it's still out of pocket cost for your consultation, or your just to talk to a clinician saying, do I need to talk to someone? Can I just walk into a store and is it safe for me just to purchase? Great, we can tell you that. But there's a challenge to finance financially for some people. So that was our main goal, is to make sure that healthcare equity was across the board with cannabis medicine. We were going to make it different, right? Since we're in cannabis medicine, let's make it different and more easily accessible and affordable. So that's Leaf 411 in a nutshell. We have programs. We've grown over, it's been 5 years now. Now we're on year number 5. Woo!
Yeah,
So
we
that's a
turned
little
6
bit.
this year. I'm like, whoa, where's
Yeah.
the time gone? It's crazy. No, that's super helpful to frame it because, again, I think for us, when I first came across you, it was certainly in the context of the adult use markets. And
Mhm.
that is like a whole other, egg to crack, so to speak. And like you're saying, you were trying to work with your state program, which at the time and still presently, you being based in Colorado, like obviously where the business was started, but we're a Texas-based brand and we're on the hemp side. And so seeing the opportunity to kind of evolve the conversation and the frame of conversations that you're able to have with different customers and different consumers, no matter what market they find themselves in, was just really, obviously refreshing to us because I think when we first got in the industry, it was really focused on the adult use and medical market. But certainly over the past 5, 6 years, we've both been in business. Hemp has taken up a larger chunk of the conversation. And for us, at that dispensary model, still, we're talking to customers kind of in real time. I can imagine too, part of, the creation of Leaf 411 is, can I even talk to a medical professional
Right.
about this? Like, even if it's legal in my state, like Colorado, from an adult use or medical perspective, then you introduce the hemp side where, yes, it's federally legal and state legal. Like, there's still just so much gray area around,
Mhm.
like, can I even say cannabis? Like, what can I say? What can I ask? And I think for us as a brand, one of the things that we realized was, where we had limitations, both from a legal perspective as well as just from a professional educational perspective, right? Like, I think that we're pretty knowledgeable about cannabis. I think our customers know that, and that's why they shop with us, is because we really want to, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. It's like we really believe what we are putting out and the quality of products that we're bringing to market. But man, there are so many nuances. Everybody's biochemistry is different. You can take the same, 10 milligrams of Delta 9 THC and it can impact, person A and person B dramatically different, let alone there might be other things that are, interfering, possibly other medications or other histories of a medical background that they are navigating through. And so it's like, whoa, you get customers coming into the dispensary and they're asking us a range of questions like, does cannabis conflict with my medication? Or, I just got diagnosed with X, Y, or Z. And I heard CBD or I heard CBG is a really popular one for insert, whatever the
Right.
diagnosis is. And those were conversations that were like, anecdotally, I can go research and find reports or
Evidence. Yeah.
stories that exactly evidence that I see, but it wasn't something that we felt super confident to be able to like offer back to our customers. And so that's when we started making the relationship with Leaf 411. It gave us this breath of relief of like, oh my gosh, we can have a partner to kind of bridge that gap. And I think that when I get to have those conversations with customers, because I'm not always in our retail, but being
Mhm.
kind of a fly on the wall, hearing from our retail staff and just kind of listening to how customers interact with us in general, they're always like, so pleasantly surprised to know that we have this partnership with you, which to your point, we are a member with Leaf 411. What that means is we waive that fee for that more guided consultation as a complimentary offering to all of our customers. And so when they're in retail and they're asking me or, they're messaging us and we're able to kind of, send them that specific code, it is something so special for us to be able to do because we know that they're curious and they're concerned and they don't know how cannabis could interact with whatever they're dealing with. And so being able to have you guys as a partner is really valuable, not only to us, but we know ultimately to our customers. And so kind of jumping off of that, I would love just to kind of, hear from you a little bit of the range of kind of why people are coming and using Leaf 411. What are some of the more popular questions, I guess, for the
Sure.
people listening? What could you possibly ask? I think for me, a big one that I know that I've shared with your team over the years of our relationship, and especially lately, as I'm not to dig us into a hole by any means, but like cannabis and pregnancy, cannabis
Yeah.
and fertility, there's different stages of life that people are again navigating and just trying to see how does cannabis work? Will it interfere? And so that kind of aside, what are some of the examples of things that your staff and team are facilitating and kind of helping navigate people through?
Yeah, no, gosh, I mean, right off the bat, we get the biggest array, array of questions you would ever imagine. The things that we've been asked throughout the 5 years have been just phenomenal. There's a lot, unfortunately, there's a lot of suffering happening across the country. Uh, Pain, mental, physical, that type of thing. So we're constantly getting questions daily about disease processes and symptoms. How do I treat the symptoms with
Mm,
these? So those are always number one. How do I treat my insomnia? How do I treat my arthritis? How do I treat my cancer? And even just cancer is so complex because you have to take a deep dive into the type of cancer. Beyond the type of cancer, there's different treatments that go along with that. And there are challenges to utilizing cannabis. So the number one thing we start off saying is, when you have a complex condition, you always want to go to a licensed professional. Have them remove that burden off your shoulder. You're dealing with that condition. And I always tell anyone I talk to, gosh, release that burden. Put it on the medical professional that's trained in this, that's their passion, that's what they love to do. And then they can take you on as a patient and do the deep dive into what you're using, how your body is going to interact with the cannabis. Because everyone is different. As we know, we've said that since day one of use. Every human body is different in the way they metabolize cannabis and the way that their body is going to react to it. So there's no one size fits all. So you have to have that clinical guidance to show you how to use it correctly. Um, we get questions, from, I know one of the big topics we're going to talk about today is dosage. That is a huge question. What we've learned just in a nutshell over the years is less is more. Always less is more. What's hard is, as a society, we want more is better, more money is better, bigger cars are better, bigger houses are better. But with cannabis medicine, it's actually less is more. You actually want what we call in the medical community subtherapeutic. We start so low that we tell all of our callers, don't expect to feel anything just yet. But you want to start at that super low dose because you could be that outlier that at 1 milligram says, whoa, I felt dizzy. I felt, I felt some of
totally.
the side effects of the medicine. And if you would have taken 10 milligrams, like here in Colorado, suggesting a suggested serving size is 10 milligrams. Well, most people would just be knocked off the rocker with that. So 1
Right.
milligram, that's why we start so low. And we tell them, okay, this is where you start subtherapeutically, and then you slowly increase over time. And we kind of give them a simple cadence, to increase by. What's wonderful about cannabis medicine versus traditional medicine, you don't have to wait 30, 60, 90 days to see if it's going to work. Gosh, what a wonderful thing, right? So usually it's 3 days, or if it's somebody that has a very slow metabolism, okay, then you need to wait 5 days or 7 days or a little bit longer, depending on the age. As your age increases, your
Mm,
metabolism slows down. You have to take into account for that. So then that's when you start saying, okay, maybe in my 20s and 30s, even 40s, I could wait 3 days and know how I was going to react to this. But now I'm 60s, 70s, 80s. I better wait a week. I better wait a week and a half to see how this THC affects me, because it can build in your body and then rear its head, and then you're like, "Oh, hold on a minute. I was feeling great. Now I feel terrible." Well, then there's that window of that threshold that you just passed. So we keep you lower, and the idea is to stay low until we know where that window is, and then we figure out what we call therapeutic window. We figure that out, and that's where you stay. You bounce around in that. So we get a lot of questions on dosing, and you know diving in, talking about that today, but also questions about everything under the sun. you know we luckily we have someone, our VP of operations, Whitney, is very versed in cultivation. Even though we don't say we can answer a lot of questions on cultivation, we have a lot of wonderful resources. We get questions about that. We get a lot of questions now, especially with New York on the mind of bringing to light these illegal dispensaries, and people wanting to know. In California, it's always been kind of an issue with the illegal dispensaries. Where do I go to get legal product? We get a lot of questions about that. How do I know my product is safe? That's why working with Restart, we've always been huge fans of your Shayda, huge fans, because you
Thank you.
work with what you have, which is a hemp retailer. Okay. One of our largest volume of callers came from Texas when we first started, Texas and California. But Texas for sure, because, whether they were crossing into Colorado to consume and then go back, whatever they were doing, they wanted to try the medicine. And then here comes hemp retailers. Fantastic. But wait a minute, it's an unregulated space. So how do we know we're purchasing quality product? That's why we say, well, everyone that actually supports our mission of free and reduced healthcare um, has to have certificates of analysis. They have to have testing with their products. Completely different from a product you can grab in a gas station, in a head shop, somewhere like that. That I don't know what this is. Or did you see the latest article that came out that it's almost I think it was 37% of products on Amazon, CBD products, don't even have CBD in it.
Yep.
That came out this week. It's like, wow, that was a new study that's,
No, totally. And I feel bad for the consumers who
yes,
just don't
who have no idea.
have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, who have no idea that they're buying a product that has no CBD in it. So then that is unfortunate and frustrating to all of us in the industry, because they all say, "Oh, this doesn't work. This product doesn't work." We're like, "Oh, it didn't even have CBD in it. How do you know what it has?"
Right, better
So
buy
yeah,
it.
so that's why we thankfully have retailers like Restart CBD that you guys ship nationally. You have products that are, gosh, tested for contaminants, and that's very important, because we even have had people come to us saying, "Hey, we want to support you." Okay, well, let's see your product. Do they test for do they test for contaminants and not just cannabinoid profile and terpene? That's great. We want to know what cannabinoids you're ingesting, but you got to know your contaminants, because going back to the questions we get, there are complex conditions, diagnoses out there all over. And people are very savvy now, and are taking charge of their health, and they want to know, and you should know, what are you ingesting, especially if it's an inhalable. You want to know what was sprayed on that flower. Was it tested, you know, um, for contaminants? Is there heavy metal, lead, all of that? So thankfully we have Restart CBD, because one of the questions we do ask is geographical. Where are you located? Um, it's kind of heartbreaking when people get on consumers that they're saying, well, why are you buying a hemp product? You should be buying from a dispensary. And not everybody has access to that.
Right. Right.
Look at Texas. Gosh, you are doing your consumers just a favor by having tested, clean products and providing that education and saying, hey, we can only go so far with guiding you on safe and effective use, but you've got complexity to what you're trying to deal with. Take that off your shoulders. Call, Leaf411 and get a nurse to
Absolutely.
guide you, because then we even take it. And if it's too complex for us, we right away send them to next level up nurse practitioner or an MD DO to take them into their practice and say, now you need personalized care. You really have to do this for your own health. So all those types of questions we get daily.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Again, I know that it's kind of a whole sometimes because it really is like your service is so applicable and helpful. And like you said, you kind of have different like tiers that you're graduating people through based on what they're coming to you for and what information is accessible, also what stage they might be in their diagnosing or what medication they might be on historically. It is unfortunately a really complex conversation to have at times, which again is why we are really grateful to have a partner like y'all to be able to again bridge that gap because we want customers to be educated. We want them to know what their options are, not that cannabis is the end all be all. I think we can
Right.
both agree on that and we'll be the first as the brand to be like cannabis isn't going to solve all your problems, but man, if cannabis could be a part of your routine, if you
Mhm.
could be educated about dosing, how to take it, what are the right cannabinoids, what is the right frequency,
The right
who,
route. Yeah.
yeah, like where do you purchase from, given where you might live geographically? I think those are just things that we are really concerned and also, passionate about helping our customers find resolve for. So kind of going, you teased out dosing. That was kind of like the big thing that we wanted to really
Hmm.
drill in on because I do think that dosing is a mystery for some people, and the conversations that we have and the way that we frame it, of course, is exactly what you shared, right? To kind of, tip of the iceberg. It's less is more. Start low, go slow. I think especially when you're dealing with edibles, and so I'm sure there's some nuances that you'll express, depending on
Mhm.
what product you're consuming, if you're inhaling it versus eating it. The term that we use a lot is bioavailability, right? And
Mhm.
so different consumption methods are going to absorb differently in your body. I think another thing that we also are really sensitive to, as well as like kind of championing, is uh I kind of grew up in the I would say illicit cannabis consumption
Mhm.
market, and the primary way that you consume cannabis was and still presently a leading form factor is smoking, right?
Right.
And so smoking is not the most medicinal when you want to maybe use it as medicine, but it certainly is the most fast acting. And so there's a lot of variations. I think, I get asked a lot of times, well, you're telling me to smoke, but smoking isn't the most healthy. And so the point is, we don't want people to feel that smoking is the only way that they can
Right.
experience cannabis. It certainly is a preference of the consumer, but there's so many other form factors now. And so when you're getting into dosing, the conversation is way more dynamic than just, eat this 5 milligram gummy and, maybe do it 3 days in a row and see. It's like, well, did you try a gummy? We also have a lot of customers who are like, can I do a gummy and a topical? Can I, smoke
Right.
something and drink a cannabis beverage? And so I obviously know some of the answers to that, but would just love to hear from your perspective, kind of how you would walk someone through understanding dosing as it
Mhm.
relates to maybe a psychoactive cannabinoid and a non-psychoactive cannabinoid, and how that, might change depending on the form factor that they are choosing to
Right.
consume.
Yeah, I think so. It all dosing always depends. First, you got to look at the route of administration, which form are you going to choose? Choosing the right form, what is your intention with it? So if someone has chronic pain, well, an inhalable will last somewhere 15 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours max, somewhere around there. That's not going to be probably financially feasible for someone that says, well, I've got pain all day long from, 8 in the morning to 8 at night and even at bedtime. Then you're smoking every couple of hours. So it always first you got to look at, well, what are you trying to treat? Is it something that's acute, which we mean sudden? Um, that's where an inhalable is perfect. If you've got something that all of a sudden a pain just hits you, what we call breakthrough pain. You've got chronic pain all day, you've got arthritis, you've got pain around the clock. Then you're gonna need an edible, and you already mentioned the layering effect. Layering can be a really great way to schedule your medicines. So if you've got something, we'll use something like arthritis as an example. You've got that pain all day long. Okay, great. You need something that's going to last all day long. Okay, well, I won't look at an inhaled product because that goes fast into your system, which is great for instant relief, but it comes out of your system really fast. So you need something that lasts longer. So we're looking at anything from swallowed oil, or some are labeled tinctures, but they're not truly tinctures unless they're alcohol based oils, because they're mostly made with MCT oil. So there's you swallow them, and then there's edibles, something that a gummy, chocolate, something like that. So you want to first start off with something that you swallow, because that you can get about 6 to 8 hours with. If you're choosing an oil, then it could be anywhere from like 4 to 6 hours. So you want to give a few hours span. Then if you say, well, I have this, and a lot of people want to get active and they want to go for a run or something like that, um, then they'll use an inhaled product if they've got what we call breakthrough pain. All of a sudden you've got an ache that's just skyrocketing. Okay, then there's an inhaled product that can cover you there. So there's where you've got your layering, and then you can also add in a topical. A basic topical that is cream based, a salve, something like that, is not going to go to your bloodstream. A lot of people still don't understand that. The molecule is just too fat, too big. Has to be either micronized, or it has to have a specific carrier that actually takes that topical product and drives it through all those layers. You got epidermis, you got dermis layer, getting down to your your blood system.
Mhm.
So it has to get through that. Very few products that can even do that. So that's why a topical that doesn't say transdermal, because those products are made with those products. Um, Anything that's just a cream or a salve, You can use all day long, multiple times a day, does not go through your bloodstream. So there's where you say, wow, I can layer all these products then. I have something for sudden acute pain. I've got something for all day coverage or all night coverage. And then I have a topical because we have receptors on our skin. So we want to, what we talk is you really to hit a home run with pain, you want to have something external and something inside the body. That's your home run. So you use both at the same time. You can start off with one for sure, and you can try a topical just to kind of get your feet wet and kind of wrap your mind around, oh, this isn't going to
Right.
get me high. And, I'm not doing something bad or illegal. That's a good place for someone who's never started to try. And then you walk into the other forms depending on what's your intention. Are you trying to treat chronic or are you trying to treat acute condition? Going back to your smoking, we typically don't suggest a smoke or a combustion product, which would be a smoked product for someone that has a medical condition. But vaporization is safer because that's heats flower vaporization. So you can heat the flower. It's safe. It's just like using an albuterol, kind of a meter dose inhaler. So you think about it in the same way. It's like, okay, this is just inhaled steam, that's got medicine in it. Okay, that is definitely safer. So if you've got a medical condition and you want that fast acting, any clinician would guide you over to a flower vaporization. So looking at your intention of what you're wanting to treat, then the dose comes along with it, staying really in those minimal doses to start off with. Gummies are number one for a reason. And I think people are still scratching their heads. So why can't these other products be number one? Well, gummies, the older adult population have figured out, hey, I can cut that easy. I can get a knife and I can cut that in many pieces. And that's how we educate. It's like, let's get that 10 milligram gummy and let's cut it into at least 4 pieces to start with, at least. And that's still 2.5 milligrams, which is still,
Right.
a good amount of THC.
Yeah.
Someone can feel that. So gummies are easy for somebody that has maybe dexterity problems, that have issues with their hands. Tinctures and oils are easier, but depending if you can open those hard bottles to push down, turn, and then look at the little numbers and draw up just the first hash line is usually a quarter dose. That's your safest. You can even go by drops. So those are really nice to figure out your exact dosage. So when we look at, well, what do I start with milligrams? Each form, each route of administration, no matter what it is, you start off with the lowest. So if it's an inhaled flower vaporization, we say a really short, you know, not so deep inhalation. Just try it out. One, set it down. Check out your, you know, inner inventory, which Dr. Dustin Sulak is very famous for teaching, and about how am I feeling on this before you just hit away. You want to take into account how you're feeling with that dose. Same thing you do with the other doses. Write in a journal. A tetragram journal is great to chart everything, or just a pen and paper to say, okay, out of 1 to 10, I was a 10 when I had my pain. I took this product. Now I'm down to a 5. Great. You have some data to share with your clinical team. So dosing is complex. It can be once you start getting into higher dosing, but just to start off, if you stay in those minimal doses and you're in that 1 to 2 milligrams, 2.5, very little to no impairment. And that's key, because a lot of people who are dealing with medical conditions say all the time, I don't want to get high. I just want to function during the day. I want to go to work. I want to be with my kids. I want to be with my grandkids, whatever that may be. I want to garden. I don't want to be high. I just want this pain to go away. So,
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing that we hear from our customers, right? It's this range of, I think, cannabis being pigeonholed as this super high THC and it's only smoking. It's like, no, there's other ways to experience cannabis. There's other cannabinoids. There's, ways to kind of try different products, like you're mentioning, oils or edibles, starting with a low dose. I am curious, just because I do think since we've entered the market in 2018, the kind of range from, THC, you're highlighting a low dose, I think, to kind of put it in my layman's terms for the listeners from a, kind of consumer perspective, Yeah, 10 milligrams is kind of the standard edible dose. You're starting to see lower dose products. We certainly offer a 5 milligram. We are offering a 2 milligram THC. So, like you said, getting into some of those more, you can kind of like incrementally build up, like milligram by milligram. Um, Obviously, there's people who have higher tolerances. My father is a great example where he is not phased by anything less than 50 milligrams of
Right.
THC, right? So he's built that tolerance up. But on the CBD side, I feel like when we first entered the market, there was just a lot of confusion around how CBD functioned to THC. And so we have a lot of customers who, again, they might be educated from an adult use, recreational market, just, from their history. 10 milligrams is 10 milligrams. But to me, 10 milligrams of THC is a much different dose than 10 milligrams of CBD.
Yes.
I find that I can have and should have when it comes to my pain management, because that was, as you know, how we really started our brand, was because I was using cannabis and specifically um, lots of THC. But what I would really realize is the more beneficial cannabinoid in this equation for me was the addition of CBD. So
Hmm.
taking, more of a full spectrum approach, but again, adding CBD into the mix. And so to me, when customers are coming in and they're like, oh, well, I'm familiar with THC, so should I just take 10 milligrams of CBD? I'm like, no, you need more. And having that conversation sometimes can be a little confusing. And so just knowing what I know about where we've evolved, maybe from a research perspective, now that, hemp and CBD have been in the market for the past 5 years, where do you encourage people to start? So you say like 1 milligram, 2 milligrams to THC to start. Where do you encourage people to start from a CBD perspective? And
Right.
does it matter if it's an isolate pure product versus full spectrum that might have those other cannabinoids present?
Yes. So, a couple things here. So, what we try to teach our callers is about ratios. So that's where you're talking about, well, wait, how much
Right.
CBD compared to how much THC is in there. So when you're looking at hemp products, you can see a product that is, say, 20 to 1 CBD to THC. Well, that's 20 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So you can look at it being 20 milligrams of CBD to 1 part THC. And then you're just like, oh, 1 milligram. Then you're saying, oh, well, I didn't feel anything from that. Great, because that's what the evidence shows that CBD does. And in very simple terms, it kind of acts like a little bit of a dimmer switch to those THC side effects, which is great because then you can tolerate a little bit more and introduce a little bit more the more CBD you bring in. So that way, if your pain isn't successfully treated at the 1-2 milligrams, you can go up to the 5, 10, 15, 20 milligrams, but you adding more CBD, dimmer switch turns on, and now you can tolerate it, and it's hitting more of those pain receptors and being more effective on those. So with CBD, gosh, there's a lot of evidence out there that around 25 to 30 milligrams of a CBD dose is a good place to start. Below that, there's a lot of questions about maybe it's just placebo, which is still a very wonderful thing. If you get a
Absolutely.
placebo effect, great, that is helpful. People talk bad
Right.
placebo, but no, if something is even just an imagination making you feel good, great, let's go with that. So
Absolutely.
with CBD, you're right. You don't look at it the same because here we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 5 milligrams of THC actually touching those receptors and making you feel less pain. CBD is completely different. Doesn't hook on to those pain receptors like THC does. So you need larger amounts are seen in that. Now, your difference between an isolate and a full spectrum, yes, there's a big difference. So when you're looking at an isolate, typically the evidence shows that you need more, double, triple the amount of CBD than you would in a full spectrum. Because full spectrum, like you were just saying, has other cannabinoids. And has other properties of the plant, flavonoids, and terpenes, and has other parts. But with CBD isolate, I don't, I don't like when people poo-poo that because there are people that can only take a CBD isolate because of drug place policy. So they need to, whether they're in, you know, uh, workplaces where they're going to test for THC metabolites, then they have to have an isolate product.
Yes, that's kind of the conversation that we have with our customers as well, just kind of trying to understand again to the best of our ability where they're at in their journey, what their comfortability is, paired with the anecdotal evidence or research that we ourselves have felt, or that our customers that have shared with us, or the papers that have existed since hemp's federal, legality in 2018. I think does and has helped kind of open up more from a research perspective. Obviously, there are a few FDA approved drugs that are in the isolate CBD camp. And so I think there's absolutely efficacy to an isolate product. And I think that's a question we get a lot too, is like, well, was one better than the other? And I'm sure you would agree. It all depends. What is your situation? What is your reason for taking these products? What is your preference for the consumption ultimately? And kind of going from there. Now to kind of twist it a little bit on the other side, we're talking a little bit, I think I mentioned tolerance breaks too.
Hmm.
Like, how do you kind of coach people through a tolerance break? In your words, what is a tolerance break? Are they something that we should be looking at more consistently as part of our routine? And I think another way to kind of frame it or interject a thought, right? We get some customers, like you were saying, they try it and it doesn't work for them. Maybe they didn't use enough. Maybe
Hmm.
they didn't use it consistently enough. I think consistency is something that we talk about from a supplementation perspective, kind of getting them to understand this isn't something that you take once and you feel maybe in a THC capacity, or maybe if you
Right.
hit the right amount of milligrams from a CBD or another non-psychoactive cannabinoid capacity. But it's really hard to get people to realize, like, I'm in pain now and I don't want to be in pain. So I'm going to take X product, and like it didn't work. I'm still in pain. So to kind of walk people obviously through the build up to find, which we did, finding your right dose. It's okay. Then I find my right dose. Conversations we have are sometimes that dose doesn't always hit the same way. Certainly personally for myself, I've been a cannabis consumer, gosh, over like a decade now. And I think if I can share, I've been maybe taken 4 tolerance breaks over the last decade. And some have been short and some have been long, right? And I think I'm knowledgeable enough to know my own body. So, kind of doing that analysis of like, well, what do I need? I work in the industry, I have access to these products, so I can kind of play around with different form factors if I'm trying to dial something up or dial something back. But I think it is still a little bit of a confusion for people of like, so you're telling me this product works, but I'm supposed to stop taking it for a period of time to like reset my body. And so I'm just curious how you approach that with, the callers, the people who are reaching out to try to help them understand a little bit of, you know, cannabis works, but it's also a plant and it's dynamic and our bodies are dynamic. And
Hmm.
so it's not you take the edible every day at 4 p.m. and then like on the seventh day, you're like, well, it didn't work or my body didn't respond to it. Like there's so many things I feel that play a factor. What you eat with it, what you
Hmm.
don't eat with it, those can play a role in how intense or how effective that dose might be at that time. So kind of all that to say, how do you approach a tolerance break? Is it something that people should be doing weekly, monthly, annually? Is it for a day? Is it different depending on how long or how much you consume? I'm sure it's, varying person to person, but
Yep.
maybe there's a little bit of, guidance that we could get to help the listeners and viewers kind of.
Sure. Yeah. 100% tolerance breaks are needed. And that's because if you look at the body, we have receptors that THC, just says, latches onto. When you flood the body with too much THC, they start hiding, and then you have fewer and fewer receptors because now you're flooding it. Wait, I'm not feeling it anymore. Well, that's because some of them went into hiding. They're like, this is too much, but you're saying, well, but I'm not feeling enough, so I'm taking more, taking more, taking more. That's when we tell someone, let's stop and let's take a tolerance break. Let's reset, just like you said, that exact wording. Let's reset the body. Minimum 48 hours. Okay, maximum, there's clinicians that will say, okay, 3 days. There's some that say a week would be great. Well, even a month would even be even better. The longer you can give, wonderful, because then you're letting all those receptors come back out from hiding. And then, it's cost effective because when you're just flooding your body because you're thinking it's not working, but yet all your receptors that it's supposed to work on are hiding, you're spending a lot of money. So, that's usually one of the first hurdles we can say, well, let's see if we can save you some money too. But like you said, what's the timing? 48 hours is the minimum. It's hard to get through that though. If you're chronic, especially a heavy user, we've had callers that we've had to walk through this and it's tough. But the beautiful thing is they can use CBD. And a lot of them will go to a CBD isolate and say, okay, I don't want THC in my regimen right now. I'm trying to take a complete break from that. And then I'm going to use CBD. And they use a lot, a heavy amount, but they feel like they have some sort of control because you're taking something. You're still with the plant, in some way. So that's a mindset that helps people get through. So whatever helps them get through those 2 days, great. We're all for it. And like you said, there's other things to activate the endocannabinoid system besides cannabis. That's that music, that's the singing. There's activity. There's love and friendship and all that. So you hone in on that too in those 2 days. What do I do that I know makes me feel good? So you get through that. But how long it lasts? However long you can take it, because that's just going to, reset those receptors, get them out of hiding. And then when you restart, you always restart way lower than you had ever dreamed. You go into that sub therapeutic again. And my gosh, every time we've done this with a caller, they were amazed how little they had to start to feel good. And it's like, that's where we wanted. And then the financial savings is just huge. They're like, great, I can do this again. And yeah, your body builds a tolerance. So then they start going up and up and up until all of a sudden you're like, I'm spending so much money, it's not helping me any. That should be your key. Okay, I need a tolerance break.
Mm.
And then we walk you through that with other products, other cannabinoids. Um, however you need to get through it is what we like to guide. Yeah, so let's see.
No,
What other
that's
question
helpful.
did you have?
That's really helpful. I think it is one of those things we almost don't want to stop because it is so
Right.
helpful, but it's understanding that it is, again, this dynamic dance that your body is doing. I
Hmm.
think it's so beautiful when we talk to our customers and we explain to them that they have an endocannabinoid system, and these cannabinoids, they function in these receptors in a very beautiful way. But I like the way that you're articulating it, right? Like you're overwhelming it. And so that your body is responding to it. And I think there's also probably variances in that experience depending on the consumption method, as well as the source and the quality of those products. Like we always like to highlight with our customers as well, 10 milligrams isn't always going to be the same effect depending on what edible you take. Like, yes, it's a great starting point to know what your body responds to. If you're a 5 milligram person and that's like the best space for you to be in, then you obviously don't want to go more than 5 because that could be unwarranted or unwelcome for you. But 5 milligram of, my edible might be different than a 5 milligram edible that you're buying in a trip to Colorado when you go visit a dispensary.
Right.
So it's kind of like we love it, but it can be complex to educate and get consumers to understand. I mean, even the whole, we always talk about Blue Dream, these strains. It's like Blue Dream is not the same every time
Hmm.
you buy Blue Dream from any, retailer or dispensary. It's a plant, depending on who's the cultivator,
Right.
depending on if it's indoor versus outdoor. So I think, unfortunately, our industry is so complex that we do have to do a lot of education to kind of distill it down. And so give
Hmm.
consumers those markers like, know your milligram count, 5, 10 milligrams, know the strain you like. Maybe it's an indica or sativa. Even those I feel like are not always true
Right.
to being good indicators. And so it's this wrestling that I think is a very beautiful wrestling that consumers should welcome and embrace, because I do think, obviously, from my personal experience, cannabis has changed my life.
Hmm.
I'm very grateful that I have access and knowledge and resources to pull the right tool out of the toolkit, so to speak, when I need it. I know if I have a really hard, leg day, my lower body is just going to be super inflamed and I then want to sit in a bath. Well, I'm going to also maybe smoke a joint or maybe also eat an edible while I sit in that bath that I'm soaking in CBD salts with. So there's, again, the layering, there's understanding what these different products are. I would just say, final question to kind of ask to you a little bit to get understanding around, we talked high level that because of hemp, I believe that it paved a way for more research to be done, I think, about cannabis in general. And so I'm just curious from a medical perspective how y'all incorporate some of that research that may have been done about marijuana or about THC, now about hemp and about these different cannabinoids, and how you incorporate that into the conversations that you're able to kind of arm your callers with. Because again, I think there's so much anecdotal, and it's great if you're like, hey, friend, I use these products and I use this much and I think it could help you in the situation. And the friend is like, oh, I'm going to do what my friend says because they found that they had a good positive reaction to it. But man, it's so much better and easier to digest. Again, I think depending on what someone is wanting to take cannabis for, sometimes there's circumstances where you need a little bit more research to be done, or science to kind of back it up. And so I'm just curious what that looks like for our
Right.
industry, what y'all have access to, how that's evolving, kind of, what's the state of research right now on cannabinoids and our endocannabinoid system as it relates to us beautiful human
Yeah.
beings consuming these products.
Well, there's a lot of research, and that's, I think, one of the kind of famous repeaters that people get into that aren't really, not even just advocating. Even people that are neutral will just say, oh, there's not enough evidence. Okay, that's just a simple, easy way out repeater statement. There's a lot of evidence. Cannabis is cannabis, whether it's hemp, whether they call it marijuana, or whatever they call it, it's cannabis. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of research. Even if you're saying, well, is there research on hemp? There's research on cannabis. So yes, there's research on hemp. You're looking at the different cannabinoids and what those cannabinoids do in the body, whether it's coming from a cultivated hemp plant or it's coming from what they call a marijuana plant, something that's sold in a dispensary. It's all the same thing. So there's a lot of research out there. We look at the research daily. So there's evolving platforms. There's wonderful platforms. This one that we go to a lot called cannakeys.com, and they've just gathered the data and gathered all the evidence that's out there and put it on a platform. And there's growing bodies of evidence and growing platforms that are giving this to the public, saying, hey, look for yourself. You can go even on the traditional sites like PubMed and Science Direct, and you can type in cannabidiol, or you can type in THC, anything you want, CBD, CBG is another. Our team will have been fangirls of CBG for a long time.
I love
Uh,
CBD.
it just has so much potential. And and then there's CBN, and then there's the little guy CBC, but then there's also the acid forms, of THCA, CBDA. There's just so much out there, and you can find so many more available cannabinoids in the hemp market than you can in the dispensary. So that's where, again, and disheartened when I see people like, poo poo on different things, like, oh, you don't want, oh, we don't like hemp. It's like, but wait, I can get CBG so much easier over here. And
And
as long as it's tested for contaminants, and I know the cannabinoid profile, I know the terpenes, I know everything about it, it's the same thing. So, what my allegiance to, and as nurses, our allegiance is to patient care.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
want to know what I can give that patient. And I'm going to look at the science, and I'm going to look at that product, and I'm going to make sure I know, as the best safety, the best product for that person, which route, which dose, looking at all the evidence. And that's what Leaf411 provides. Our nurse team provides that evidence. So we want you to look at it. We want the consumer to look at it, not just believe us like you do when you walk into a dispensary or retailer. Yeah, you got to believe what they say, but there's actually evidence out there, and we'll point you in that direction. That's why we also guide clinicians. We have more and more clinicians coming out to us saying, "Hey, we want to know what you know. We want to learn this now." But it's a lot. It's complex medicine. So, we've actually provide the resources to that. So, yes, there's, going back to your question, tons of research out there, because cannabis is cannabis, whether it's a hemp plant or it's a, dispensary product. That cannabinoid is what you're looking to see. What does that cannabinoid do in the body? What receptors does it touch? What does it do to the receptors? How does it work in the system? That's what we want to know scientifically, and that information is out there. Now, most of it is animal and lab models, but that shows the promise. We're seeing anecdotal now. We have the doctors, we have the patients saying, believe us, this is working. And so, what's hard is legislators want us to wait till there's, those traditional forms of studies, double
Mhm.
blind placebo. If we waited for that, oh my God, be 20 years from now or 50 before we'd be telling patients, hey, try this. You know, they've got to catch up to the consumer. The consumer's like, forget you. I'm sick and I want something that works. So I'm going to use these products. Great. Let's at least get clinical guidance, people who are trained in it to guide you to use which products safely. So that's what we do at Leaf 411.
No, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I always learn a wealth of knowledge when I talk to you, interact with your team. Y'all are so great at what you do, and it really is just a testament to your care, like you said, for the patient. So, all the listeners out there, I hope you will please go visit leaf411.org. You can interact with Catherine's team. Like she said at the beginning, they have this free model where you can just kind of interact kind of on a base level. But as Restart customers, if you want to have more of that guided consultation, definitely reach out to us. We're happy to share our code that waives that consultation fee. And just again, thank you for your time, for sharing so openly. I know that it is just scratching the surface on
Yep.
so much more that has to be done. But I think that's the beauty of the plant that we really want to share with our audience, is just that it starts here. And then it's like, what can you as the individual do with that information, knowing that these resources, these products, these people exist. Like, hopefully our listeners and viewers know that they can always come into our dispensary. They can always DM us on, you can't DM on LinkedIn, I mean, on YouTube, which is such a shame, but you can leave us comments. So leave comments and questions down below. We'll be sure to answer them. Come into our retail store. Our team would love to answer those, and also find us on social media, and we'll happily, point you in the right direction that you need to go. But thank you for joining us for our latest expert series featuring Leaf 411, and we will be back next week with a